So I have completely rewritten my message today, multiple times. That does happen once in a while, but today this is really a rewrite. And I am so excited about what I have to share with you today. But I have to go back in history, in time a little bit. In 2009, if you know me, you know that I like to read, and I really like reading Christian biographies. And I read the biography of this man once. His name is Frank Laubach. And I've talked about him in services before. Some of you heard me talk about Frank Laubach. Maybe you're like, yeah, I think I remember something about him, but I don't really know what you said. So let me remind you. Because when I read his biography, I have it on my Kindle, and I just read it regularly. Just periodically, I'll pick up and just read through it. It's an easy read. And I love Christian biographies because here's how my mind works. Whatever God did for people like Frank or Hudson Taylor or George Mueller or Amy Carmichael or these other people whose biographies I read, whatever he did for them, he's willing to do for us. It's not like he has favorites. It's like, oh, well, I really just like Frank, so I'm only doing that for Frank. Nope. What he experienced is the map that we can follow for our lives to experience those kind of things with God as well. That's what I believe. That's why I read them. So Frank Laubach, his story is astonishing. When he was 45 years old, he was a journaler, so he journaled all the time, and you could read his journals. And he had lived an average life. He wrote in his journal, on his 46th birthday, he was in the Philippines as a missionary, and he said this, "I no longer have the sense that life is all before me. Some of it's behind me, and a miserable part of it is so far below what I had dreamed that I dare not even think about it." Doesn't sound like a very good journal entry on your 46th birthday. He said, "Nor dare I think much about the future. This present, if it is full of God, is the only refuge I have from poisonous disappointment and even almost rebellion against God." That's how he felt at 46 in 1930. By 1970, when he passed away, so 40 years later from that day, the Encyclopedia Britannica noted that he was perhaps the single greatest educator of modern times. He was voted Man of the Year in America. In the last 40 years of his life, he developed a Each One Teach One program, a literacy campaign that was used to teach 60 million people to read worldwide in their own language. He wrote 50 books. He became an international presence in literacy, religion, and government circles. He had an influence on poverty, injustice, illiteracy worldwide. He even spoke in front of presidents. So that was the last 40 years of his life. From the journal entry where he just wanted to walk away from God to that. So the question is, what happened in 1930 that changed this man's life? And what happened in 1930 that changed his life was remarkable. In 1930, he began an experiment, he journaled about it, with a new kind of prayer that changed everything for him. In his journal, he wrote this. He said, 2 years ago, a profound dissatisfaction led me to begin trying to line up my actions with the will of God about every 15 minutes or every half hour. So in other words, every 15 minutes or half hour, he was trying to say to God, what's your will? What's your will for me right now in this moment? So every 15 minutes, he wanted to turn his attention back to God. He said, people told me it was impossible to do this, but he said, I judge from what I hear that few people are even really trying that. But this year, I've started out to live all my waking moments in the conscious listening of that inner voice, asking without ceasing, Father, what do you desire in this minute? He said, it is clear that that's exactly what Jesus was doing all day, every day. Oh, absolutely. That's exactly how Jesus lived his life while he was here on earth. In every moment, the waking question was, Father, what would you like me to say or do in this moment? So he started out trying to say that every 15 minutes or every half hour, so a couple of times an hour. And then he started moving it up so that it was once a minute. Every minute of his waking day, that was his goal. To say in his mind, Father, what do you want? What's your will right now? What would you like me to say or do? This is what caught my attention. After 30 days, he wrote this. He said, I felt a joy I have never experienced in 16 years as a Christian. This sense of cooperation with God and little things is what so astonishes me. I need something and turn around to find it's waiting for me. I have to work to be sure, but there's God working along with me. God takes care of all the rest. My part is to live in this hour in continuous conversation with God and in perfect responsiveness to His will. After 60 days, he wrote this. The experiment is interesting, although I'm not very successful so far. The thought of God slips out of my mind, I suppose, 2/3 of every day. Okay, so he wasn't hitting his goal. 2/3 of the day, God wasn't in his mind. And he said, this thinking of keeping in constant touch with God is the most amazing thing I've ever run across. It's working. This concentration on God is strenuous, but everything else has ceased to be so. Listen to what he said. You want any of these things? He said, I think more clearly, I forget less frequently. Things which I did with a strain before, I now do easily, and with no effort whatsoever. I worry about nothing, and I lose no sleep. 1 year into the experiment, he said, it is difficult to convey to another person the joy of having broken into this new area of realizing God's presence. He called it God's here-ness. God is here. He said, oh, I wish that a dozen or more persons would try this and write their experiences so that we could each share with each other what we were finding as a result. The results, I think, would astonish the world. I was hooked. When I read that in 2009, I'm like, I've got to try this, and the church has to try this. And so in 2009, I started teaching about it, and I came up with this little formula. It was called GPS, and each of the letters stood for something, and it was designed to do what we were talking about with this. And we talked about setting your alarms on your phone so they went off during the day to remind you. And when your phone alarms went off, you would stop and you would think to God and you would just whisper that prayer to Him, and the G and the G, P and the S and all those things. And so people started doing this. And in 2009, when we started doing this as a church, the church I was at, these were just some of the comments that came flooding in as people started doing what Frank was doing. One person wrote and said, my best day was this last Tuesday. I set my mind on tuning into God, and I felt His presence in my life throughout that day. Another person wrote and said, I've made it my heart, it's made it into my heart now that I've got past just the formula of doing it. Initially, when you start saying that prayer, it's kind of formulaic and it's hard to get in your mind. She's like, it made it into my heart now. Another person set alarms all throughout the day, and when the alarms went off, they would pray, and they said, I was busted twice by the alarm going off just as I was about to be upset about something. Talk about feeling like God was standing right there tapping you on the shoulder as a reminder to just take a deep breath. Another person said, I find myself worshiping God and thanking Him for what He has provided from the previous hour before I even think about asking Him for more. Sometimes it doesn't seem like I need something specific, so I just ask for His will to be revealed. And story after story after story poured in from people who were experiencing God in whole new ways. So, what I never told the rest of the story is I had experiences that were the most amazing of my entire spiritual life during that time I was doing this. It was the closest I've ever felt to God. It was amazing. Temptation was easy to overcome. It wasn't even tempting. It'd be like tempting me to eat lima beans. No temptation at all. I don't want them. It was like things that I would have been tempted but were gone. Worship became powerful to me. I wanted to worship, and that's not one of my primary spiritual pathways to God, and I couldn't help it. It was so meaningful to me, and I wanted to pray, and I saw all these incredible things. I experienced all these incredible things, and then as I ran the experiment further and further out, it was like God was standing on the shore right here, and I was in a boat right next to Him. That sense of His presence was amazing, and then it was like my boat carried me further and further away from Him, and it was a terrifying experience, to tell you the truth. I hated it. It's like, wait, I'm doing what I used to do. Why isn't it working anymore? And it stopped working for me. I couldn't sense any of His presence. Temptation came back to normal. Everything changed. And I was frustrated with God, honestly. I'm like, hey, you can't do that. You can't show up in my life like this and by doing this and then just kind of fade away from me. And I knew in that moment I'm missing something. This is how God works in my life. I knew that there was something I was missing. I knew that there was something I wasn't getting that He wanted to teach me. And until I learned it, I knew that it wasn't going to be, because He wants to bring you into deeper things. He has greater experiences for you. So it was frustrating for me, and I've come back to this again and again. Matter of fact, pretty much every January since then, I've revisited the subject or reread the biography, trying to figure out what I was missing, depending on God to show me. I knew the day would come, and the day came. I finally know what I did wrong. And I want to show you this because I want you, I said when we started this series on Great Expectations, it is all about learning to expect great things from God. I want to show you how you can have great experiences with God and live with great expectations with God by using Frank Laubach's life as a map, and we follow the path that he's been on. So I want to ask you to open up your program, take out the notes, even though the notes are going to be totally different. Matter of fact, we're only really going to go into point number 3 on your notes. So if you haven't done that, would you grab a pen, some things to write down? You're going to have some things to write down as we go through this. Welcome to those of you, of course, who've joined us this morning online. So those of you who are watching on YouTube or our website at penuelchurchlife.com, we're so glad you're there. You might want to write some things down as we get into this today. So we're only doing point number 3. So respond to God's bid for connection is all we're really going to be talking about. Respond to God's bid for connection. Now, I don't know if you know what that phrase, bid for connection, means. It's a marriage phrase, and it comes from this author, Dr. John Gottman. If you are married, ever want to be married, you have, in my opinion, to go to this website, Gottman.com, and in the upper right you see blog. If you click on the blog, you can subscribe to the blog. It is the best marriage content out there. And you'll get articles, about 4 or 5 a week, and you will learn so much about marriage. He is a scientist who studies and researches marriage. He has a laboratory where he hooks couples up to all kinds of sensors and watches everything about them when they're interacting and fighting with each other. His data is so scientifically validated, he can tell within 10 minutes, with a 90% documented success rate, whether or not your marriage is going to make it or fail. Scientifically validated. A little scary. Would you want to have those machines on you? And it's like, woo. And so he knows what he's talking about with marriage. And one of the things, this phrase, bid for connection, is from him. The bid for connection idea is just what it sounds like. It's like you're married, and your spouse turns toward you in an attempt to make a bid to connect with you. So they may decide to try and bring up something that hurt their feelings. That's a bid for connection. Or tell you something they're really excited about, or something they're frustrated about, and may not even be about you. That's called turning toward you, making a bid for connection. And you have some options here, don't you? You can just turn away. Or you can just keep watching those Packers. Or you can do anything you want. You can ignore their bid for connection. In his research, what he's discovered is that great marriages respond 90% of the time. Isn't that good news? They don't hit every time. So it's like, okay, this is one of the 10%. They're missing this one. Okay, great marriages turn toward that bid for connection 90% of the time. And if you'll learn how to make that connection, just 90% of the time, only 9 out of 10, you can miss every 10th one and still have a great marriage. So why in the world am I saying it this way when I'm talking about connecting to God? God is always turned toward you. Every moment of every single day, he is turned toward you, and our God is 100% of the time making a bid for connection. He is always trying to connect with you. So let me show you what this looks like on your notes. 3 things. First, you need to understand God always wants to be with you. He always wants to be with you. When you love someone, that's what you want. When you love someone, every moment of every day, you want to be with them. That's what you want. Every moment of every day, you want to be with them. So I told the story last fall. One of the greatest things that happened to me in 2020 happened last November. My kids are all grown and gone. They live in Colorado, in Minnesota, and up by Green Bay, and they live in Omaha, and they live all over. And on this one weekend in November, I had all of them in my house on the same day. First time in 4 years, I had them all together. I can't even tell you the excitement in the weeks leading up to that, how excited I was. And then they got there, and it was like, there were times that I would just be sitting back, looking at them all, and it's like, incredible. I got them all in the room. And then the morning I woke up when they were all about to start going home that day, or the next day, I felt such sadness. It's like, can I hit pause right here, please, somehow? And then they started leaving, and I felt so, so sad, because all I wanted was more time with them. That's all I wanted. And I am an imperfect, flawed dad. But all I want is to be with my kids and spend time with them. God is a perfect father. Best moment of his day, every day, is when you choose to take a little bit of time and turn toward him. Best moment of his day. Matter of fact, he's given a very clear teaching about this in the Bible, about how he wants us to turn to him and respond. The Bible says this in Hebrews, let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. If I had my prayer notebook open today, if I'd brought it with me, you would see at the top of my prayer notebook is that verse. When I'm praying each day, that's one of the first promises that I quote back to myself and remind myself of. Because there's 3 really important truths in there. First, do you know what you're doing anytime you're praying? God is on his throne, and notice the description of the throne. It's a throne of anger and vindication, right? Like all the Christians holding up picket signs everywhere. It's like, you're going to burn in hell. That's what his throne is. No, it is a throne of grace. It is a throne of grace. He is turned toward you at all times, and the throne where he sits, it's not that the throne he sits on is grace, it's that he is grace, because he loves you so much. And he says you get 2 things from him anytime. So he wants you every day, anytime you want to turn toward him. And what you're doing when you're praying is you are stepping into the presence of the throne of the King of the universe. And you get 2 things there. First is mercy. Mercy is what you need when you have done something wrong you deserve to be punished for. And mercy is, God, I own this. Withhold the punishment I deserve to pay. And he says, you get mercy every time you respond to his bid for connection. And then grace is being given things you don't even deserve, right? If some stranger walked in here right now and offered to pay off your mortgage, you don't deserve that. That's just grace. And you're going to the throne of a gracious God, and he is offering you grace and mercy. He is turned toward you all the time. And I love how he says, look at the attitude we're supposed to bring when we walk into his presence. When you pray, he says, you're praying with confidence. You know why you pray with confidence? Because you're his son or daughter through faith in Jesus. My kids never need to be ashamed to come to me, ever. Don't care what they've done. Do not care what they've done. They are my son, my daughter, and I love them and I want them always, period. No matter what. They can come to me with confidence. And again, I'm a flawed man. A very flawed dad. This is a being of pure love who just wants to spend time with you. Because he's just crazy in love with you. Best moment of his day is when you decide to turn to him. You're his treasure. So this is what we're doing. We're responding to God's bid for connection. And then what you're doing then, because you know that this is who he is, then you're learning how to carry on an inward conversation with God all day long. Which, again, I know what I'm saying. If I were to ask you, how much time did you spend praying last week? I know the results. I read. I follow all the Christian websites. I know how little Christians pray. I know what I'm up against here. Because it's like, yeah, I mean, the reality is we don't do what the Bible tells us to do. Look at the verse. Look at the first word in that verse. Never. Never stop praying. We stop praying all the time. Which, by the way, is why we see so little results in our life. But this is what he wants. He is turned towards us and he wants us to turn toward him. And we turn towards him through prayer. And what do? we make doing the will of God our focus. That's what we do. You're not turning to him to get on your knees to pray for an hour every hour of your day. You don't have time for that. You are just turning to him. As he's reaching out to you, in an inward voice, you're reaching back out to him, and you are making your focus just doing the will of God. And this is where everything clicked for me this last week. I love when this is what God will do in your life. He puts puzzle pieces together. There are broken things, and you bring those to God, and you say, I don't understand this. Reveal this to me. Show me. And he shows you in his time. There was a reason he made me wait. I don't know what that reason is. But he finally showed me what I was missing in a dramatic way. I was reading it through the book of Luke recently. And I got to Luke chapter 17, and this is where God showed me what I can't wait to tell you this morning. In Luke chapter 17, verses 5 through 10, and I put it on here because I want you to, if you have some time this week, sit down and just read through those few verses. Jesus' disciples come to Jesus. They're seeing incredible miracles all around them. Matter of fact, the story that comes right after this is there are 10 lepers who come to Jesus from a distance, and they're like, have mercy on us. And he heals all 10 of them. And he says to, only one of them comes back, and he says to the one that comes back to thank him, he says, your faith made you well. That's what did it. Your faith. It's like, so they're seeing all of these miracles, things that are never done. Can you imagine if Jesus were here on earth, it would literally be, he'd walk into Uplands and heal everybody who wanted it. And the hospitals would clear it out. Would that be a dramatic thing to see? And you're one of his disciples following behind that. You're seeing all this amazing stuff. So they naturally come to him in verse 5 and say, show us how to increase our faith. Because we want faith like this. Show us how to increase our faith. That is like the greatest question you could ask God. You want to ask God a great question in 2021, ask him that one. God, hey, would you show me how to increase my faith? So they asked Jesus this, like the question, and Jesus responds this way, which is really a strange answer. He says, boy, if you could have faith as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. Now, wait a second. They just said, would you show us how to have greater faith? Does he answer it right there? Is there any answer in that? No. He's like saying, you're asking the right question. Because you know what would happen if you have faith just as small as the smallest speck. You could say to this mulberry tree right here, I don't know what a mulberry tree looks like. I should have looked that up. We could put a picture. You could have said to this mulberry tree, hey, you're sitting here. I want you to go get in the sea. And it would have got up and walked like this, because that's how mulberry trees apparently walk when they're walking. And it would jump into the sea. It's like Jedi powers from Star Wars. You can literally, on a later place says, you can move mountains by faith. You could actually tell a mountain to jump in the sea, it would move into the sea, and then he says, nothing would be impossible for you. So you are on the right track, disciples. You are asking the right question. Great! And the answer is, how does our faith grow? And then Jesus tells a crazy story. And the first 100 times I read this story, I had no idea what he was saying. None. And when you're reading your Bible, this is how God does it. On the 101st time, he shows you something you've never seen before. That's how he does it. And anytime you're reading your Bible, it's why you have to find a way to just get that in your mind. Because he will speak to you. And anytime you're reading the Bible and something strikes you, you've just heard from God, and he wants you to stop and pay attention. And all of a sudden, it clicked. Jesus says, okay, you want the answer how faith grows? Suppose one of you has a servant plowing or looking after the sheep. Will he say to the servant when he comes in from the field, come along now, sit down to eat? Is that what he'll do? You know, this is a time when slavery was common. He doesn't condone slavery. But he's using an illustration they can relate to. There's a master, he's very wealthy, he has slaves. The slaves are working in the fields and taking care of the farm animals. They come in at the end of the day, and the master's hungry and the slave's hungry. Does the master say to the slave, oh, why don't you come sit down? Let me take care of you. Is that what the master says? Nope. That's not what the master says, right? He doesn't say, come along now, sit down and eat. What does he say? Won't he rather say, prepare my supper, get yourself ready, wait on me while I eat and drink, and then after that you may eat and drink? Isn't that what he'll say? That's how it worked. The slave came in from the fields. The slave came in from tending all the animals. He walked in, got cleaned up, prepared the meal for the master, served the master, cleaned up after the master's meal, and then he ate, right? That's what he did. And then he says, Jesus goes on with this crazy story. It's like, because this is the answer to how to have more faith. And he says, will he thank the servant because he did what he was told to do? Will he? No. It's just expected of him. He will do what the master wants done. And then Jesus sums it all up and says, okay, so you also, when you've done everything, look at that phrase, you were told to do. Should say, we are unworthy servants, we've only done our duty, that's all we are. And that's the answer to how to have more faith. Isn't that a crazy answer? It's like, wait a second, I thought you'd tell me, like, read my Bible for an hour a day. I thought you'd tell me, go do this great thing. Nope. He says, you want to know how to have greater faith? You want your faith to grow? And all it needs to grow is the smallest tick. If it grows the smallest tick, you will see God doing supernatural things in your life like mulberry trees walking. You will see unbelievable things if you can grow your faith a little bit. And he says, here's the key. You do what a servant does. They do whatever they're told to do. In other words, you develop a tenacious commitment to doing the will of God. Whatever he asks, the answer is yes, and that's how you grow your faith. And all of a sudden, it just all clicked. As I was rereading Frank Laubach's biography, reading these verses, it's like, oh, I get it. Because this is what Frank Laubach started praying in 1930. What, Father, do you desire said, and what, Father, do you desire done in this minute? That is entirely about serving God, isn't it? 100% of that is about, what's your will right now, Master? I'm the servant, you're the master. You tell me what you want. You want me to come in after cleaning, after working in the fields all day and make you a meal? Yes. The answer is yes. Whatever you want, the answer is yes. Your will is all that matters. And all of a sudden, it's like it all fits together. What did Jesus teach us to pray? He said, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. And this is exactly how Jesus lived on earth. In every moment, he actually said, I'm only doing the things that I see my Father doing. That's all I'm doing. I'm simply doing whatever the Father wants. I'm saying what the Father wants. I'm doing what the Father wants. And the Father booms from heaven at the baptism of Jesus and said, this is my Son with whom I am well pleased. This is it. You want to know how to experience God? You do this. And so I modified those words a little bit. I changed a little bit and I said, so this is just it. No more GPS, no more, it's one sentence. Well, it's actually two, but it's just one concept. Father, I'm your servant. Is there anything you want me to say or do for you right now in this moment? Now think about the faith that's required to say that. Because he said this is how you'll grow your faith, right here. You make yourself a servant available to do whatever God wants at any moment. Now, does it take any faith to say that? Yeah, look at the faith. When I say this, in faith, I am saying to God, God, I know you're with me. God, I believe you have a plan for me. God, your will is all important to me. God, you will guide me. God, you will use me. And I'm going to surrender to your will. Think of all the faith statements that are wrapped up in that one sentence. Father, I'm your servant. What would you like me to say or do for you right now in your name? And this is where it all clicked, because what I had done years and years ago in 2009 when I was having those amazing adventures with God, I kept adding to it. You can't keep 5 thoughts in your mind at once or 3 thoughts in your mind at once. It's too much. But you can keep one thought in your mind, the thought that Jesus kept in his mind, that he taught us to keep in our mind. Father, what's your will right now? Just in this moment, what would you like me to say or do? You can keep that thought in your mind all day long. And then, once you get that this is what it's about, and your faith will grow when you do this, then you develop cues to turn your heart back to God. Because I promise you, you are going to get distracted. I guarantee it. You're going to walk out of here and your car's not going to start. Or you're going to get home and burn lunch. Or someone's going to get a fever and you're going to think, COVID, flu, who knows? What's going on? And you're going to go to work tomorrow and there'll be problems at work that you hadn't anticipated, and you're going to have a conflict with your spouse or your significant other, and your kids are going to be angry and just be in a bad mood, and it's like, you think you're going to remember any of this? You have no shot. None. So you have to have cues. And on the back of your notes, I put a few sample ideas. Some people put an empty chair in a prominent place, and every time they look at the chair, they remind themselves that God is present with them, and then they say that line. They see the empty chair and they go, God, I know you're here with me, so I'm your servant. Is there anything you want me to say or do in this moment? Anything. Some people put a picture up. Whatever the picture is that works for you. So you can use alarms on your phone, but I'm telling you what I love most are sticky notes. I love sticky notes. So I restarted this experiment this week. And I restarted with only one prayer. My goal is to maintain a continuous, ongoing conversation with God, the God who is turned toward me at all times, who just wants a little bit of me. And every moment I turn to him is the greatest moment of his day. And I made it my focus, starting Monday morning, to turn toward God. I was just trying to do once an hour or once every half hour. So you can do a number of hours you're awake, times 2, and that would be your first goal. And then what I did on Monday is I wrote down the time. Every time I turned, I remembered. Now, for me, this works great. I work at my desk all day long. I don't move. So I have a sticky note right there in front of my laptop, and then the sticky note becomes the reminder. And so I saw the sticky note, and I'm like, oh, 7:50. I stopped, and I said, and again, you don't have to stop. You can do this while you're working. You can literally, in a few seconds, say, Father, I'm here to serve. Is there anything you want me to say or do in this moment? Anything. What does that take me? 2 seconds? 3 seconds? Maybe? What would you like me to say or do in this moment? And I started. And day 1, and I only track it during work hours. I don't carry my sticky note when I am done. So during work hours, that first Monday, I hit 16 times, which I thought was pretty good. That's 16 more times that I turned to God during my work hours than normal. So then Tuesday came, and I did a lot more, 28 times. And again, I don't write them all down, and I don't write them down after I go away. And I'll tell you, the first 2 days were super hard, very hard. This is a hard habit to start. But I started even doing it in my meetings. I'm in meetings all day long, virtual meetings. And so even on the meeting, though, I can be listening and in my head say to the Father, Father, is there anything you want me to say or do for this person right now while I'm on this call? Again, 2 seconds. And I've redirected my thoughts back to God and said, I'm available to do your will right now for this person's life. And all day long, that was my goal. And then Wednesday, and the sticky note is the constant reminder to me, turn back to the God of love, who just can't wait for you to turn. Who doesn't have bad things planned for you. He's got good things planned for you and the people around you. And then Thursday, and I didn't write as much down on Thursday, it wasn't my best day. And that's okay. That's okay. 19 times in my work hours is still better than 0 times. But what I found on Thursday, and then Friday, I needed bigger sticky notes. So Friday, 36 times. And then on the weekend, I'm not by my computer, so I don't write it down. But what I found is Thursday into evening, Friday into evening, and then yesterday, and then all day today so far, constantly in my head has been this turning back to the Father all day long. What would you like me to say or do in this moment? What would you like me to say or do? What would your will be in this moment? So, it was really hard to get started. Monday and Tuesday were really hard. Wednesday started to get a little easier. Thursday I started to see things, and Friday I made a list of what I started experiencing. I work at home alone, so I play my music, and I have Spotify. There's a list called New Music Friday, and it puts out new Christian music every Friday, and I like new Christian music, and it's all kinds of genres. Half of it I don't like, and half of it I love. I'm always looking for new artists, and I heard some songs this week that just simply made me worship God while I was sitting at my desk working. And my heart was just so full, and prayer became passionate. I prayed with more passion on Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday. I mean, I just couldn't help but pray. I wanted to pray. When was the last time you wanted to pray? I just couldn't wait to pray. When was the last time you felt that? And while I was praying, I had this overwhelming sense of the presence of God with me and the confidence that he was at work right then. I can't tell you anything he did. Nothing. No stories yet. But I had this sense of expectation, great expectation, that God was with me and already at work. I felt like I was facing no problems alone. But the coolest one was how many times when you say to God, is there anything you want me to say or do? On Thursday and Friday, he started saying, yes. I have a lot for you to do. And it wasn't like complicated things. People would pop into my mind and say, and it would be, write this person an encouraging note. There was a lot of that on Thursday and Friday. A lot of that. So I'd grab my phone and just text him, just a few sentences, just telling him I love him and I'm praying for him. And there was a lot of that. Or I'd be in meetings and I'd be whispering, just consciously, inwardly saying to God, is there anything you want me to say to this person? And it would be something about encouraging that person. And so in the meeting, when it was appropriate, I'd say, well, I really like working with you because of this skill that you bring. This is so cool. Something I never would have thought of, except that the Father himself has now got access to my will. I'm the servant who came in from the fields and came in from tending the animals, who he's now saying, okay, now I want you to do this. And that's how you grow your faith. So I can't wait to fill sticky notes next week. I can't wait to see what he has for me. The Bible just, by the way, comes alive when you're doing this. The Bible just comes alive. It becomes a living, dynamic book when what you care about most is doing God's will. All right, so I know that I've put a huge challenge in front of you, and that's okay. I'm excited, and I hope that a few of you take me up on it. I mean, ultimately, I hope you all do. But I really hope that some of you do. And make it your goal one time every half hour. Just do that. One time. You start today. I did it during the Packer game yesterday. During the Packer game. I thought more about Jesus yesterday than the Packers. How about that? Right? Because you know what? He's more important to me right now. And I bet a lot of Christians in Wisconsin can't say that. But he's what I want. Because I've already, I'm old enough, I've seen the wins before. I've seen the Super Bowl trophies, and I know how you feel the next day. It's like, oh, okay, now what? But you never get that with God. You get this excitement and this joy in this relationship with him, and I want that for you. And it's hard, and it's going to be really hard the first few days. And by the way, if you find something that works really good for you, would you tell me? Would you tell me? I'm asking for two things. If you find something that works really good for you, because some of you don't sit at a desk. So you have to find a way to do this when you don't sit at a desk. Would you tell me? Because there are a lot of people who don't sit at desks who are watching, and I want to be able to share your ideas or suggestions on that. Or if you start doing this, like these Christians from so many years ago, when God starts to show up in your life, would you start telling me? Tell me your stories, because it'll encourage other people to do this too. We can do this. You can turn toward the God of love who's making a bid for connection with you. Now maybe, again, if you're watching online or here today, this whole idea of a personal God who wants to guide you is a little bit strange to you. Because that's not American Christianity. Most of us were raised in American Christianity where it's about going to a church service once in a while. You go and you sing some songs and you listen to some guy or gal speak and then you go home. When it was convenient for you. I mean, the idea of actually bringing your will under submission to the will of a living God, that's a foreign concept to many people in Wisconsin and America. It only happens when you enter into a relationship with him. He wants to put you in his family. The most amazing promise in the Bible, to me, is that he has made the promise that he will adopt you as his son or daughter. And then he says in the New Testament, it's a forever adoption. Can't be lost. If you want this relationship with God, you got to let him give you that first. Let him put you in his family, then he becomes your father. And the way is open because of Jesus and what he did for all of us. When Jesus died on the cross, he paid in full with his blood. for the unloving things we've done, the selfish things we've done. He took any obstacle out of the way between us and God the Father. And if you will let Jesus give you this gift, he will forgive you, and the Father will adopt you, and then all of this becomes yours. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish. If you want something different than just religion, then you have to begin with relationship. You have to start here. And if you want this relationship with God, all you have to do is turn to him right now with your head bowed and your eyes closed. Say something like this to him. Say, Jesus, I'm not perfect. Far, far from it. But I've heard that you died for me. And the selfish, unloving things that I've brought into this world. So please forgive me. Please forgive me and come make your home inside of me today. I want to be a part of your family. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, if you're here and you just prayed that prayer, I ask you to take the little connection card out and just let us know. There's a box where you tell us that you asked Jesus to forgive you or renewed your commitment. Let us know about that. If you're watching online, you can go to our website at penuelchurchlife.com, and there's a Get Connected tab. Just type up a little note, let us know that you prayed, and we'll send you some follow-up material in the mail. So thanks so much for coming today. Keep track, and let me know what happens in your life. I have great expectations. So hope to see you again next week.